right, welcome to the program on a Monday, a fairly busy Monday here. Nice day here in New York, 60 degrees, as a matter of fact. So, this very mild winter continues. Will we get a snowstorm before the year's over? Well, we usually do, but as we said, when you get them this late in the year, they're gone in one day. So, pretty much the worst part of the winter's over. If you spend a little day on your looking at your stocks, listen. All I can tell you is this: when days like this happen, and if you're not paying attention, the stock market went down 1,000 points today, because of that. Which it's not the same in the old days of going down 1,000 points because the stock market's gone up a lot. So, but still, 1,000 points is a day that gets your attention. And what you don't do today is sell. That's what you don't do. You don't have to buy. You can buy a little if you want, if you think it's going to be a one-day occurrence. I don't know if it is or not because you can't tell because it's an outside source. This is not an economic situation, although it can become one because we're talking about the virus that is impacting first China. Now it's shown up in South Korea. Now it's showed up in Italy over the weekend, which caused major sell-off in the European and the U.S. markets today. When you get this kind of sell-off, you're looking for that quick bounce back. And we've had a lot of those bounce backs in the last 2 years when we've had the quick sell off. I was not a buyer today. I was not a seller. I was not a buyer. I don't know how many days this is going to last. I don't even know how you judge how many days this is going to last because you want to see that, like tomorrow, if there's no added cases in some of these other countries, then I think it'll start to abate and you'll have a little bounce back. If we wind up with 500 more cases tomorrow morning in Spain, in Germany, and in France, and in North America, well, then it's going to get worse. So it's hard to say because the impact of this is going to be felt for the next 6 months economically. So it's hard to say exactly what's going on here, and it's very hard to relate it because it isn't an economic situation. It really isn't. It's an outside situation that it'll have impact on the economies of all these countries, no question, and ours. Affect demand, affect supply chain, stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how this happens. And I'd be careful here. I'd kind of stay the course. If you're in, you're in. If you've been on a sideline, I'd stay on a sideline. I wouldn't jump in. I'd let this abate a little bit first. I'd let the market come back a little bit before I jump in this time. I wouldn't be an automatic buyer today. And there was some things you looked at today and you'd say, wow, they really hit this one. They really hit that one. And they did. They hit some of the technology stocks really hard. They hit a couple other stocks pretty hard. But I would be leery of just jumping back in with both feet. I'm not sure this is a one-day occurrence. It'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. Couple things. Let me start with the politics, then I'll get to the fight. The Democratic race for the nomination is at a very, very important juncture this week in South Carolina and then on to Super Tuesday because a couple things have to happen here this week. First of all, you have the debate tomorrow night. And if Bloomberg is going to bounce back at all, despite how much money he's going to spend, he has got to bounce back in this debate. He'll get one chance here at bouncing back. And if the theme is not Wednesday that this was a different Mayor Mike, if there was not a different Bloomberg on this debate stage, and that he didn't get it and understand it and be forceful and be confrontational and, look presidential and all the different things. If he doesn't have an amazing comeback, I don't think he's got a chance. Now, he's a long shot anyway. They're all long shots behind Bernie Sanders now. Bernie Sanders has this is starting to move very much in his direction. There's no question. Nobody except Bernie even has a chance to get enough delegates. I don't even think Bernie will have enough delegates, but it's very hard to see, knowing the passion and the commitment that Bernie's delegates have for him. I cannot see them going to the convention with a majority and ever leaving them So the idea that they're going to leave him, which the superdelegates can do on the second ballot, I don't see it happening though, because they're just so fervently behind this guy. This is a case where they are setting a candidate up probably to lose in the general election because the primary is won to the outsides, and then the general is won to the middle. And Bernie is just not enough. He's not at all to the middle. So I just don't think he's got a winning hand. The question is, does he have a winning hand in the nomination department? And the answer is probably yes. I would say right now he's a heavy favorite to get the nomination. And what's happened is so many candidates being in hurts whoever you would pick as the second person right now. Because if the second person was just going against Bernie, that person would be garnering a good number of delegates, number one. Number two, Bernie will continue, as he did in Vegas, pick up excess delegates because the other people don't get the 15%, which means more for him. So instead of him getting in the low 30s, he gets in the high 40s because of the fact, and that will happen in these other states, and he could wind up with half the delegates in California, which is going to be a big number of delegates. So from that standpoint, you have the guys down the middle, really knocking each other off. And Bloomberg's money is hurting Biden. And obviously, the other candidates who have no chance to win, like Klobuchar, Warren had a great debate and got nothing in the polls out of it, and nothing in the primary out of it. Absolutely nothing. And she will not do well in South Carolina. So, I mean, it's just a question of when she's out. She is impressive. She's a pit bull. She can speak. She knows the subject matter. She can attack. She has no chance to be president. Zero. She has nothing going on. It's just not going on. Klobuchar's got to just look in the mirror and realize it's over. Mayor Pete set himself up to be a serious candidate in 4 years. He doesn't have it this time. He'll start to fade away. And then the question is Biden staying in against Bloomey? Bloomey's going to stay in because he's got no reason not to, but he needs a huge comeback in the debate. And I think soon you will have Biden, Bloomberg, and Bernie. And then the question is, when does a Biden or Bloomey get out and throw it to the other one to see if they could have a chance, even a chance, against Bernie? But Bernie's a heavy favorite now, absolutely a heavy favorite. And like I said, could this be McGovern all over again? It could, yes. Maybe not to the extent of McGovern. I don't see Trump getting, 500. I think if I go back and remember, I think Nixon got 520 electoral college votes, carried 49 states. I don't think Trump could ever do that, but you have an incumbent against a guy whose views are outlandishly to the fringe, and a good economy. 60% of the people say they're better off than they were 4 years ago, which is a scare. It is almost a set hand for an incumbent. 3% unemployment. We have almost zero institutional unemployment, almost zero. And better employment for minority applicants than ever before. It's a winning hand for an incumbent unless he screws it up. It really is. So we're heading towards, right now, Bernie getting the nomination, which can still be stopped, but they're running out of time. It's got to happen in the next couple of weeks. And we're heading towards, right now, what would look like a Trump victory. I mean, if it's Bernie. I can't see it any other way. But let's see what happens here. Now to the fight. Bought the fight. Yes, you try and sit through the, all the theatrics, which is almost kind of getting like wrestling. I mean, if you saw if you were all there, and I'm sure you were, if you bought the fight, I think they said it was 1 million buys, which is a lot of money. I mean, it cost $79. It's a lot of money. I mean, you get 1 million buys. A sport's not dead when it does 1 million buys at $70 or $69, or if it was 79 in one place, 69 in other place. I don't know if it was all fixed price everywhere, but I think I paid $79 for it. And hey, if you're getting 1 million buys at $79, that's a lot of money. Um, but it was goofy. I mean, it was almost like it was almost outside wrestling with the, you know, playing crazy, not playing it once, playing it over and over again, and taking 15 minutes to get to the stage. I get to the ring. Um, we had Tony Page on. A couple other people I heard that day or saw that day. Almost everybody gave you the same theme. Now, I had not seen these guys fight last time, and I hadn't paid 2 seconds of attention to either one of them before the fight. But all I kept hearing was that Fury wasn't in shape, that he hadn't trained hard, that he had changed trainers in desperation, and that Wilder was ready, and this was going to be it, and he should have won the first time, and this and that. Everyone. I was said to you. Remember, I said to Tony the other day, "Wow, I'm surprised how even the odds are, considering everybody I hear that likes Wilder." And then I watched the fight, and it was very surprising to me because it was exceedingly one-sided. I didn't watch the first fight. I'm going to gather that in the first fight, Fury stayed away and just used his reach and punched from a distance. This time he went in tight, brought the action to Wilder. A lot of grabbing, a lot of clutching, a lot of dirty stuff and ugly stuff that you're going to get when you got two guys that size. I don't know what he was doing with his tongue at that one point. I hope he wasn't licking his blood. That was disgusting. It was really ghoulish, okay? I don't know what that was. I don't even want to think about it. But I'm going to give Wilder the benefit of the doubt for this for two reasons. And there's going to be a rematch, you know that. But it was already in the contract. But here's the reason I'm going to give him a rematch. Give him two benefit of the doubts. Otherwise, I'm going to just go in thinking that he's not a very good fighter. Number one, I didn't think his corner did a great job. In that, I don't think they got him refocused, and they really never got the blood stopped in his ear. Now, maybe medically they couldn't, but it just seemed to me they could have done a better job doctoring that cut than they did. I didn't think his I didn't think his corner was very connected. I have no problem with them stopping the fight when they did. I really don't have any problem with the referee stopping the fight. I don't have any problem his corner was going to throw the towel in. He was beaten at that point anyway. I was surprised he even lasted for that round. I thought he was out the round before. And I really think the shot to the ear really knocked his equilibrium off. It was an odd shot. It was, a direct shot it was almost to the back of the ear. It was a weird shot that he caught him with. He caught him with a shot, but he caught him there. He was clearly bleeding from his ear. I don't know if it affected his eardrum. There's been some comments that it did, but it clearly affected his balance. It took away all his power, too. He didn't have any power at all. It took him 3 rounds till he even seemed to be wanting to load up a punch again. And I thought those weren't all knockdowns. I mean, a couple of them, he threw him down. I mean, it was sloppy, ugly fight from that standpoint. But when you have guys that big, and they are so big, I mean, they're just immense guys, especially Fury. I mean, the guy is just immense. I mean, he might have been in the ring that night at 285 and, 6'9", 285 pounds. But he was the better fighter by a wide margin. This was a one-sided fight. I mean, there's no way around it. This was one-sided. There's not much you can say about it. Wilder didn't take the fight to him at all. And then once he got hit in the side of the head, he didn't have much at all. He was just trying to hang on for dear life. And, give Fury credit. He carried the fight. He won the fight. He won it going away. I have no problem with him stopping it. I think he was done anyway. I don't think anything better was going to happen except him gets hit in the canvas again. Give him credit and give Fury credit. And he was a lot better than I thought he would be, to be honest with you. I think it was a great fight, but mostly because I thought that, A, Wilder's corner didn't do a good job, and B, I was just waiting for Wilder to do something. But not knowing Wilder, and I didn't. I heard about what a great puncher he was and everything else. We didn't see any evidence of that in this fight. But clearly, to me, going back and watching them fight again, I mean, I would make Fury a pretty solid favorite against him next time after what I saw in this fight. I mean, that's pretty obvious. I mean, because he dominated the fight. So give him credit. And whenever, I don't know if the next fight has to be their rematch or they're going to let, you know, try to tie things up and create a bigger money fight beforehand. We'll have to wait and see if there's been talk of that. I don't know if they will allow it. I don't know what the contract reads. But from a boxing standpoint, here's what I'll say about it. A lot of people were talking about it. That's the first time in a long time I can remember a lot of people talking about boxing. It's the first time in a long time. And then we had the NHL deadline today, the trade deadline, and it's funny. I was thinking about that today, and I'll get to that a little later. I'm glad Kreider. I like Kreider. I've known Kreider a little bit since he came up years ago, and I like him. So I'm glad he stayed, and he's having a good year. I'm glad he stayed. Glad he got his money. Glad he stayed. As far as the Islanders, I took Harrison and some of his friends over to the Islanders at Christmas time. He and a bunch of his friends wanted to go to the game the Saturday before Christmas. They had an afternoon game on Saturday afternoon. So I took them over, and the Islanders were great and everything. I mean, they gave them jerseys. They really couldn't have gone out of their way and been nicer. So I went up to see Lou during between periods. I took everybody up to say hello to him, up to the suite, and I stayed around and talked to Lou for a little while. And I said, Lou, at the time the team was red hot. Now, obviously, it hasn't been of late, but it was then. And I said, what do you think about this team? You know, how complete are you? And he said to me, I'm going to have to get one person who can really make a difference up front. I know that it's got to happen. And I've been thinking that all along. And then, obviously, voila. So that was the idea. Let's hope it's the person that he needs to make a difference. And that was what Lou usually gets his guy. So, I mean, he usually is aggressive in that regard. We know what, you know how good he is. You know how he's usually on the mark with what he does. He's got a sense for that. He's got a knack for it. He has a real feel for that. I mean, that's who he is. I mean, that's why he's one of the great executives in any sport and one of the most successful ever. So that's why he just, some guys just understand what it, Lou can look at a team and say, this is exactly what I need. This is what I have to go get to get the team to do what I needed to do, to have the team make the run it's got to make, to get this team over the hump. And he knew that was at Christmas time. So that's 2 months ago. And he waited, and I was wondering if he was going to get it done beforehand, and let's see if it makes a difference. So from that standpoint, I was thinking back to that today because that was, I think, just maybe the 22nd or 23rd of December when I went over there and chatted with him about that. I got to go visit again. I promised him I'd come back and sit with him and watch a couple of games. I'll do that in the spring. Maybe I'll wait till the playoffs, though, to do it. I don't know how many playoff games they're going to play in Nassau. That was up for grabs. I think it's still up for grabs as to how many they would play in Nassau as far as the playoffs go. That's I gather a little bit of a debate here. You got Jeter weighing in on the sign stealing, but hey, that's not, again, enough already. As far as NBA, there's nothing really. I mean, there was a couple of decent games this weekend, but nothing that thrilling going on right now. Obviously, there's the whole Cuban thing with him going to get obviously hit for what went on with his antics. But it's been years since he's done a crazy with he used to do this stuff all the time with the officials. I mean, he used to get fined and fined and fined and fined, and he drove Stern mad. If you've been around long enough. Before he kind of softened his image and really presented much more likable Mark Cuban and a very likable Mark Cuban in the Shark Tank shows, which I think made him a very popular figure because everyone likes him on those shows because he's so nice to everybody on the shows. He doesn't play the heavy on the show, and he's a wealthy guy who's always there to help, and does it and helps out a lot of people and is very nice about it. So I think that show's been very good to his image, but he's a little bit back being to the old Cuban when it comes to what's went on this past week. So we'll see what happens there. But just obviously frustration. He's a fan. He gets into it. He always has. He's always been that way. So if I were an owner, I'd probably be the same way. I have to admit. So I'd be sitting there pulling for my team and being in the middle of it because he obviously is very hands on with his team, which we know. And then you get crazy with the officials sometimes, which I can see happening. Definitely can. So from that standpoint, we'll see what happens there. A lot to do, as we said. That's the interesting part of this February. It hasn't been one of those crazy times where there's just nothing going on. It seems like there's something going on every day. And obviously a lot of it has to do with the fact that baseball had to take such a big part out of its regular day-to-day stuff to deal with this Astro thing. The other thing is the NFL draft has been ratcheted up, because the Jets and Giants, from our standpoint, have early picks, but also because Tua now is in the mix. But him now saying that he was going to be very closed to medical inspections and also working out, I don't know how he's going to be able to do both. I mean, people are going to want to feel some kind of, whether you're the Lions, and the Lions, from what I understand, cannot trade Stafford. They cannot. It does not work from a salary cap standpoint. It does not work. The hit is insane. So they could draft Tua and keep him on the team. It could trade him. They can't trade Stafford this year, from what I understand. But does that keep them in the mix, or does let somebody else trade into that spot? But Tua accentuates the draft because he now goes way to the top. And I'm telling you, if he didn't have the injury, despite the year that Burrow had, I still think he would have been the first player picked. But with the injury, it's not going to happen, especially with the year that Burrow had. Now, I know people get into how small Burrow's hands on it. Forget that stuff. You know what? That stuff is so overrated. It's ridiculous. So, nonsense. He is so talented that people they need to find a reason not to take him. But it looks like he wants to try and get by this now without being very open. And I don't know how he's going to do that. I understand that he doesn't want to work out 9 different times. I understand he wants to be very positive about what he can do and can't do right now. I don't know how he can not give up a lot of information, though, considering just how checkered his injury history is, because it is incredibly checkered the last couple of years. You got to feel, if you're going to take a player as high as 3 or 4 or 5, you got to have a feeling about it. If he creates a lot of mystery around this, then it's going to be very hard to take him that high. Even with the amount of ability he has, and it is a very, very high level of ability that he has. He has a tremendous amount of physical ability. I mean, he could be a great quarterback. He could be a all-pro quarterback. He has that kind of ability. So it's going to be interesting to see, because for the first time the last couple of days when I saw the thing he said, he was a little guarded for the first time about what he's going to allow and not allow. And I don't think he's going to be able to get away with that. I think he's going to have to be more transparent. Baseball, a couple things there with the Yankees. I'll get to those too. Andujar, Cole. Some of Cole's comments are, I mean, I did not realize that Cole not only is a brilliant pitcher, but he's also one of the great minds of the Western Hemisphere, which I was not aware of until I saw some of the comments. I mean, those are unbelievable. And Miggy trying to find a home. We'll get to that too. So we got a lot to do before we hit the fan at 6. Back after that. There's an old adage in baseball that if you hit, they'll find a place to play you. You've heard that since you were on a little league team. Okay, because guys who can hit, you know what? They're gonna you're gonna give up a little defense. They're gonna do what they can and get a guy in a lineup who can swing the bat. When you're on a team as good as the Yankees, that isn't always the case, though. It can sometimes be a little more difficult than that. And this is the plight of Miguel Cabrera. We know that Miggy can hit. We know his best position is in the batter's box. We understand that. No one wonders whether, even with or coming off the injury, no one wonders whether he can hit or not. Now, finding a place for him to play is a little different. The Yankees are pretty much of the mind that Gio Urshela has blossomed into an everyday third baseman and that's his job. They didn't like Miggy at third anyway. We're going to see Miggy play the outfield where there could be some time for him. We're going to see him play a little first base where there could be possibly some time for him. We know he fits into that whole order of Yankee right-handed DHs, who the Yankees have many players who their best position is right-handed DH. We understand that. And they have a couple of guys who obviously are extremely versatile. And their versatility proved to be, a very big part of their success last year, especially LeMahieu. And the guy who is blossoming into their best player, and that is Gleyber Torres, who should become, I would think, in the next couple of years, become their best player. I think he has the ability both ways to become that. I think LeMahieu had a great offensive year, and he is extremely versatile. I don't think he's a great first baseman, but he's extremely versatile. And but I think Torres has a chance to take it to another level. I think he can be a really special player, and I think you've seen that. And remember, he's still a baby. I mean, what he's accomplished so far is remarkable considering the fact that he's still a kid. So you could be looking at something very, very special there. And really, obviously, Judge has a world of talent. He's got to prove he can stay healthy. But when you're talking about a guy who's a middle infielder who can hit and is equally adept at second and short and can hit like Torres can, I mean, that's at this very young age, this is a very special player. And clearly, I mean, the Yanks still have the same logjam of right-handed DHs. We know that. And then you have Miggy there, who everyone knows he can hit. I mean, listen, there are plenty of teams that will line up to take him. He could be a lot of teams' DH. You see, if you want to talk about other teams, there are a lot of teams that will take him and make him the everyday DH. There's teams that will make him the everyday third baseman and live with it just to get his offensive production, because he's going to produce. If you give him 500 at-bats, he's probably going to produce, 60 or 70 extra base hits and 100 RBIs. I mean, I think he's that kind of player. But with the Yankees, you're talking about them they prefer that they have players who don't do any harm anywhere, which means they don't do any harm defensively either. So they don't want to just plop them down somewhere and, hope for the best. I think they'd like to see if maybe he could surprise a little bit somewhere with his glove. I think it's actually less likely that you move him around and get more, because I think he's a guy who is he's defensively challenged to begin with. And if you try to move a guy like that around the different positions, at least at one position he can get a little nuanced and get an idea and a comfort level at the position. If you keep moving him to multiple positions and asking him to do it on the major league level, that is very difficult to do. That's difficult for a lot of people to do. A lot of people aren't very good at that. And you're asking a guy who is not a good defender to do that. It's very tough to do. But it's a pleasant surprise to have, or a pleasant problem to have, because of the fact that you have a guy who can produce big numbers with the bat. Clutch. Big hits, clutch hits. I mean, there's no question. I don't think anybody has any doubts that that's the case with him. But that's one of the things you try and solve in the spring. And that's one of the Achilles heels that this team has, is it has way too many right-handed power DHs. That guys who their best position is DH. I mean, if in a perfect world, they got a bunch of guys who that would be the best place to play them, and just leave them alone. They have a lot of those. And they got a lot of very powerful right-handed hitters, as we know. So what happens with Anaheim is going to be interesting to watch. That's what spring training is about, is to give a guy a chance, give him an opportunity to do a couple of things, to be able to, see if he can find something that clicks for him defensively. Find a home, away from home, if home's third base. And I'm not even sure that's really a home, but it was a destination, if anything else. And see where he goes from here. Because you're going to see him, according to the Yankees, you're going to see him in the outfield. You're going to see him at first base. You're going to see him in a couple of places and see how that works out. And I don't know. I've never considered first base a place to hide people. I've always felt the only position on the field that you ever can really legitimately just hide a guy is left field. And even there have even been defensive guys who have challenged that, going back to the days of Todd Hundley, okay? I mean, we know you can actually put guys actually in the outfield who can't play in left field. So, I mean, and that's the simplest place. To me, there is no other. First base is not a place to do that. There are too many ways you can screw up your team. It's too many places you're involved in the game in first base to ever think that's a place you can hide guys. That's always, when you're a kid, you hear, oh, yeah, put the guy at first base, put the guy at first base. Good hit, no field, put him at first base. And the pros, it does not work that way. First base, first of all, is not an easy position to play. And it is an incredibly active position. When you take the bunt and the cutoffs and everything into account, it is an incredibly active position to play. One of the most active positions on the field. And as I said, not an easy one to play. You got foot, and some guys, as you know, just cannot. I mean, I'll give you two guys who are two of the greatest defenders of all time who did not feel comfortable at first base. Now, Mickey Mantle played an okay first base. He wasn't great there, but he wasn't abominable, and he got kind of used to it. Willie Mays did not want to play first base, and Joe DiMaggio did not want to play first base. They were not comfortable there at all. As an example, those are two of the greatest couple of outfielders of all time. But you got to feel comfortable with the footwork at first base if you're going to do it halfway right. I mean, you don't have to become a Keith Hernandez or Wes Parker, but to do it right, or at least play the position, footwork is a requisite to play that position. You got to have some modicum of footwork down. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty ugly over there. So, I mean, and we've seen, because I remember when they moved Mantle there. Mickey's legs were going. You didn't have the DH, which is why the DH always made plenty of sense. Because think about if you could keep a Mickey Mantle around. And Mickey would have been a perfect DH. He actually would have played more games in those years and would have put up better numbers if he could have been the DH. But he made the move for the last 2 years of his career, and he actually got to a point where he was fairly comfortable at first base. He really was. I mean, it was not terrible. He got kind of used to it. He didn't love it. He always seemed a little stiff there. But he got to the point where he was okay, could fill the position. You didn't worry about him. I mean, and once in a while you got a really good play out of him. But, I mean, for the most part, you didn't worry about him over there. And he was never going to make you forget, Joe Pepitone at first base, who happened to be a tremendous fielder. I don't know if people realize how good Pepitone was with the glove and with the arm. Pepitone was an incredible talent. Secondly, he was a unbelievable first baseman, as classy a first baseman as you could have. When you had Boyer at third, Kubek, Richardson, and Pepitone, that's as good a defensive infield as you could have anywhere, anytime. I mean, that ranks with Brooks and Belanger and Davey Johnson and Powell. And now that infield gets more attention because of Brooks. Although Cletus if Brooks is a 10, Cletus is a 9.8. And Belanger was wonderful. But when you go around the horn there, and Boog Powell was highly underrated. That was a great infield. The the Cubs had a great infield. Banks, Beckett, and Kessinger, and Santo was a tremendous defensive infield. So, and then Pepitone went over and played in that infield, with Santo, Kessinger, and Beckett. Went over to the Cubs and played there a little bit. But he was a great, great first baseman. I mean, really, he was left-handed, first of all, but lanky, but really he could pick it at first base. And they put him in the outfield one game, and I happened to be at the game. And they put Pepitone in right field, and I'm like, wow, what the heck is Pepitone doing in right field? Well, they're playing the first game of a doubleheader in 1965 against the Indians, and they put Pepitone in right field. And, the Yankees were hurt that year. They had a lot of injuries, this and that. They were falling out of it. That's the first year they were first year their demise. After getting to the 64 series, they were getting really old. Whitey was hurting. Mickey was starting to fall off. Roger was hurting. Richardson and Kubek were hurting. I mean, so this was the beginning of the end. And they put Pepe in the outfield. And Pepe threw guys out at third base in right field that you would not have believed the P's he threw. I mean, just unbelievable. I was like, oh my God, he had an arm that was unbelievable. So, I mean, you're talking about a great outfield throwing arm. I mean, scary good. And, in the old days, that was a big deal. People don't, that part of the game is gone. That part of the game doesn't exist anymore. In the old days, you used to revel in what guy could throw the best from right field. And, the Dodger fans talked, of course, about Carl Furillo. Whatever team he was on, Indians, Tigers, everyone talked about Rocky Colavito's arm. And Rocky came in and pitched, actually, when he was with the Yankees, as you know, came in and pitched. There was so many, Al Kaline had a very good throwing arm, okay? I mean, there were so many guys who had really wonderful, wonderful throwing arms and great right field arms. And and really was a whole big thing about accurate arm. The Evans in Boston had a terrific arm. If you go up later, guys like Ellis Valentine, who you might remember from the Montreal, great arm. Just a great. Dave Parker had a great throwing arm. So there were so many guys that had just. But if you go back to the early days, in the American League, you had these guys like Rocky Colavito was a guy that people always talked about, having this just incredible throwing arm. And Clemente, of course, was another guy who had this just incredible throwing arm. Just was and basically like to throw the ball sidearm a lot too, but really he just had an incredible throwing arm. So there was so many guys, and they used to show those arms off. I mean, they because in those days you'd see the outfielders, they would throw, it would be about going first or third on somebody's arm, trying to go first or third on this guy's arm, trying to score on this guy's arm. I mean, so the throwing arm has kind of been lost in baseball. It's almost like an aside now if an outfielder has a big throwing arm. You don't even see them use it. You very rarely hear about it. Oh, this guy's got a gun. This guy's got an incredible. You hardly hear that. But in the old days, you knew who had. It used to be the talk of who had the big arms, and what arms you would run on, and what arms you wouldn't run on. And that kind of the part of the sport's been lost. It really has. Maris was a very good fielder in right field, and he had a very good throwing arm. People don't realize what a good all-around player Maris was. Maris would break up a double play. He wasn't an average hitter because he tried to pull everything at Yankee Stadium. They wanted him to pull everything. Everything was pull the ball, pull the ball, pull the ball, hit the ball in the, hit the ball in the seats, groove that swing, and so he hit 260, but hit all those home runs, And Maris has, hit 133 home runs in 3 years at Yankee Stadium. If you go back 60, 61, 62, in those 3 years, Maris hits 39, 61, and 33 home runs. Never comes close to hitting 30 again in his career, but hits 133 home runs in those 3 years. which is a remarkable number. Obviously, cleaning up at Yankee Stadium, had that perfect. Also, batting in front of, which if you remember the Billy Crystal show, the Billy Crystal movie, Haug tells Mickey when Mickey's red hot, I'm going to bat Roger in front of you. Roger had been batting behind him. They put Roger in front of Mickey. Now all of a sudden, what's Roger saying? Well, the best hitter in the world is batting behind you. The most feared hitter in the world is batting behind you. What are you going to see? You're going to see nothing but fastballs. And Roger goes on a crazy tear after that. And Mickey wasn't thrilled about it, but he didn't say anything about it. But the amazing statistic is Roger Maris had 61 home runs and got no intentional passes, which is almost unfathomable to think about. You did not walk a man who had 61 home runs, and you did not walk him intentionally once. But how would you walk him into Mickey Mantle? So, and Mantle that year played a lot of games. He got hurt late in the season. He had the abscess from the hip. He got the injection from Dr. Feelgood. You know what happened? He got an abscessed hip. Wound up in the hospital during the World Series. Only had 6 at-bats in the World Series. But he did play over 150 games that year, which kept him in the race until he just got exhausted and sick down those last couple of weeks of the season. But he kept himself in good shape that year and played a lot of games, which for him, if you could get him to 150, then you were going to have a big year. You were going to have a very big year if you could get him anywhere near 150 games, which was not that easy to do. But most years, if you look, for a guy who played with these incredible injuries and was always hurt, except for a couple of times like 63 where he broke his foot, he usually was able to get into the 140s with his games. He won the MVP and he only played 123 games, and 121 and 123, one or the other in 1962, but he did win the MVP in those amount of games. 63, he broke his foot, was out for months. That was a freak injury. He was out from June to August. I think it was June 5th that he broke it, and then he came back like August 13th and hit a pinch hit home run on a Sunday afternoon. That I think was like August 12th or 13th. He came back. The Yankees won the pennant by a mile that year anyway, and then got swept in the World Series, as you know, by the Dodgers. But most years he was able, because when he retired, he had played more games than a Yankee ever. At that point, 2,401 games, which is a lot when you think about it. So he did find his way into those games for the most part. Quick break, we'll be right back. Free throw situations, and right now they're ranked number 1. They are, in my mind, the best team in the country. I've never been the biggest Kansas fan, but they are that. So from that standpoint, I'm not surprised by any of that. And that after being dominant as they have been, both Gonzaga and San Diego State lost. But I'll tell you, despite them losing, they right now have such a wide gap that I still think they're all going to be the number 1 seeds. I think it's going to be surprising that anybody else will be would be a 1 seed. That would surprise me. And UNLV beat San Diego State the other night. I think it will be surprising if those teams have been so successful. I mean, the 3 of them, if you look, the 4 of them, they have no losses all year except each other, and very few losses on the season. They still can afford to stub their toe, and I still think right now that most likely you'll have Kansas, Baylor, and they'll meet again. They can meet in the conference championship. They can meet again in the tournament. Kansas, Baylor, Gonzaga, and San Diego State will probably still all be number 1s. Duke is always a threat, but they'd have to run the table. And Dayton is an issue too. That they could, they are having a great year, and I'm assuming that they beat Duquesne. Said I didn't look at that score, but I'm assuming they won. I would have heard it if they lost. I think they won. So they've had a very good year, and are at least in the running if things fell apart they could wind up getting a very high seed. Now, as far as the Big East is concerned, yeah, Dayton beat Duquesne by 10. I've told you the last couple of weeks that Creighton is playing better than anybody in the conference. They are. They won again big yesterday. They're playing by far the best. Now Nova's coming on. Seton Hall's going to have to play both Nova and Creighton to finish the season. They beat St. John's the other day. St. John's, the only chance they have now is to run the whole tournament, is to win the conference tournament. Otherwise, they're not getting in this year. But right now, Nova's coming on, playing better. Seton Hall looks to be a little bit, with their last couple of games, getting past their problems a little bit. Although I wouldn't say 100% yet. And then, of course, Creighton's playing better than anybody in the league. And they're going to play home against Villanova and then at Creighton to finish the Big East season. So there's still a lot to do here in the Big East. But all those teams are going to be very prominently placed on the 3 line, the 4 line, and the 5 line. You're going to have a lot of Big East teams. Between the 3 line and the 5 line, you're going to have a lot of Big East teams in the NCAA tournament. Right in that mix there. Because they've all been on the backside of being ranked this year. They've all been in that 20 to 25 or 18 to 25 stuff. I mean, obviously, Villanova's been a lot higher than that, and so has Seton Hall climbed to that too. But, they've slipped a little bit, lost some games. But I think that you have a very balanced league this year. I don't think there's one team that stands out. Villanova is superbly coached, and they know how to win these games. You expect them to get better here. They still got to show they're going to be really good in the late game situations, which have bothered them this year. That's what they haven't handled well. They're bigger than they've been in the past. They can shoot the threes, which is part of being Villanova. And they have to just play better, protect the ball better, play better situational basketball at the end of those games. But it's going to be very interesting to watch. And as I said, if you go by the last, 5 games or so, Creighton has played on a very, very impressive level. They're playing really, really well. And they got it all together right now. And are very, very dangerous. And I would say right at this moment, they're the best team in the Big East. Whether there'll be one a month from now, we'll see. It changes. But right now, I'd say they're the best. I think that they're playing that well. And there's going to be some interesting games down the stretch. All right, we got a lot more to do. We'll join the fan at 6 right after.
Mike's on. He's ready to go. On the Fan. New York Sports Radio. Mike's on. Mike's on. He'll get you the sports any way that he can. It's Mike Francesa on the Fan. Sports Radio 66 and 101.9 FM.
All right, Mike, here we go.
All right, Mike's on a Monday evening. Take you right up until 6:30. Brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Brought to you by those who drink it, as always is the case, as we take you right through the half hour. And, 2 things. One, the NHL deadline. And I'm not going to tell you about the player that the Islanders got because I don't know anything about him. But I do know that I sat with Lou right before Christmas, and he told me I need an upfront guy who can make a big difference with this team. And I've been waiting for him to make that deal. He took it right to the edge. Hopefully he got that guy. He got a guy that I'm just, looking at the scouting report on the guy who's, can score goals. He plays special teams, 2-way center, blah, blah, blah. So hopefully they gave a lot for him. So hopefully they got a guy who can make a difference. Okay. And, no one's better at Lou at doing that. They could use it right now, so hopefully they did. And I'm glad that Kreider stayed. I had been in Kreider's company a couple times through the years. He actually sat in front of me at the Mass for the Pope. He took his grandmother. He sat right in front of my wife and I the day they had the Pope said Mass at Madison Square Garden. So that's the last time I think I saw him. But I'm glad he stayed and got his deal. He's playing really well right now, so good for him. I know the Rangers had a little deal with an accident. Hopefully the players are okay. And looks like they're moving in the right direction with what they have. So it won't be this year, but looks like they're moving in the right direction. the Yankees will put Cole on the mound tonight, and somebody sent me the Cole article that Sherman did where he spoke to Cole about a lot of things, and a couple of things that jumped out at me. Number one, you're told in that article about how unbelievably cerebral Cole is. Okay, we know how talented he is physically. We know what kind of arm he has. That's how he got the money he got. But also that, he has a fervor for information. It began at a very young age, blah, blah, blah. He and his father, charting pitches, putting them on the computer, doing it, studying workload, studying, all different things on the Excel spreadsheet, studying everything they did. This began an infatuation with optimizing skill with knowledge, about how Cole, first-year pitching coach Matt Blake says no pitcher has watched more bullpen sessions to pick up tips. Cole has quizzed Yankee hitters on their approach against him to better understand the batter's mindsets. He has devoured the Yankees' analytics. He has tried to get every kernel of information. He's aware of everything that goes on. But this same player told you he had no knowledge, that he never noticed anything about the Astros. Even though the Astros were reportedly still selling signs into 18 and he was there, he knew nothing about that. Said he never saw it. So here's a guy who they're raving about here that sees and hears everything. But amazingly, he didn't see any of that. Isn't that amazing that happened? It really is just startling how that happened that way. So here's a guy who the whole article is about how bright he is, how exceptionally bright he is. He tells you in the article how bright he is, how amazingly bright he is, how amazingly aware he is, how he gets every kernel of information from everywhere, never misses anything from anybody, foe, teammate, any situation. But when asked about the sign stealing, says he had no knowledge of anything that was going on. Boy, imagine how that got by him. I'm sure he has spent a lot of time figuring out how that just got by him because, someone this aware, someone with this incredible brain power, it's amazing that he didn't see anything. I tell you, he better, with some of the comments he makes, he better pitch well. First of all, he's getting paid a lot of money, so there's going to be some pressure on him. And I know it's been everything about him has been very positive so far. Everyone has raved about him, raved about him wanting to be here. The whole thing with he wanted to be a Yankee his whole life. The whole thing about the the sign, the banner, the whole thing, the controversy with the whole thing that he made the banner, the whole thing. All right, but the idea was that this is a guy who has not only taken it to the next level as a pitcher, but has also done it as a student of the game. Okay. I think so, Cole said when asked if he was more curious than most pitchers. But I also can articulate it. It makes sense to me. Some people, this overwhelms them. So it would be smarter for them not to waste their time on it. Man. And with Cole, okay, with that, Cole took the most expensive right arm ever and points to the head he is jamming to get his baseball PhD, doctor of pitching. I got a lot of stuff going on in here, so I need to feed the animal a little bit. Mike Mussina was not a very popular player because he was not considered one of the boys, because he thought he was smarter than most players, and he was. He's a Stanford guy. He used to do the New York Times crossword puzzle, which is not something most baseball players do. Okay. Cole here, I mean, it almost sounds that he thinks he's smarter than everybody. So this is going to be very interesting to watch, especially if early on here you have a guy here where everything has been positive. I mean, everybody around the team has said wonderful things about him. He has been welcomed with open arms. He has not been pressed at all even though he has given you ridiculous answers on the Astros, he has not been pressed on that at all. You have had players on the team say they think the Astros were cheating last year, but they leave Cole out of it. Like he wasn't part of it. Oh, yeah, well, I'm not talking about Cole. I'm talking about the rest of the Astros. Oh, okay, I got it. So the Astros cheated. They were cheating last year. I know it, as some of the Yankees have attested, but none of that has to do with Cole. And then Cole comes up with the fact and tells you about how brilliant he is and how he doesn't miss anything. And the Yankees tell you how this guy turns everything upside down to get every kernel of information, notices everything, is prepared. His mind is just an incredible machine, except he didn't see anything that went on in Houston. He has maintained he has no knowledge of anything that went on. So either he's not as smart as he portrays himself, or he is not telling you the truth about what went on in Houston. You can make your own decisions. But when he talks about how some people, this overwhelms them, so it would be smarter for them not to waste their time on it. He's talking about pitching here. Okay? Pitching. There have been some pretty good guys, who might not have been the smartest old boys, who could take the ball and throw it by you without thinking a whole lot about it. They took it, and they just threw it right past you. That's what they decided to do. They didn't outthink you. What they did is they just took the ball and threw it right by you, and were pretty successful doing it. So there's more than one way to play this game, okay? And, as we know, one of the greatest players who ever played it said, you know what? They hit it, I catch it. They pitch it, I hit it. And that was his theory on baseball. So, it wasn't any more complicated than that. Here, you're talking about a guy who wants to tell you that he's not only the smartest man in the room, he's the smartest man on the planet. Okay? Except if it says something he doesn't want to see. So, in the middle of that, I wonder when they're talking about all this amazing brain power and all this preparation and the amazing stuff that they've seen from already, how he didn't see one iota of what was going on in Houston back after this, about whether or not they want to go to 17 games, whether or not they want to give the owners a easy move on the new CBA and approve the things we're talking about. And there's certain things in there they obviously are going to try to push, including revenue from playoff games, revenue from gambling revenues, that they get to share in the gambling revenues. The NFL Player Association has always been embarrassed in their negotiations, mainly because they've never been unified and they've never been structured. They've never had the war chest. They've never been in a position where their players won't walk across for game checks. And you have to have that, where your group won't break and has to have a real threat that they'll go out. The owners don't think the players will stay out. And a lot of the star players haven't stayed out. Their lifestyle didn't lend them to stay out. Some guys just basically were going to come over, and some of the stars were big to come across because they want their money. So that was a huge problem. They are at the best place they've ever been in because the owners have their tongues out. The owners want this, and they want it now. Why? Because the owners want that 17-game slate. They want to create a new wild card package. They want to create a new international game package, that any of the games played outside the United States are all going to be a separate package. They want to create another separate package. And also because of what's going on in the world of media, there's a good chance the Sunday Ticket will move and change hands. They're going to tweak the Sunday Ticket and sell it. So they're talking about getting this done. They can't move on this stuff until they get it approved by the players, because the players are involved in all this stuff. And until they get the schedule and the postseason schedule and the new 17-game schedule and the other stuff all ratified by the players, because it's all has to do with game stuff, so it has to do with work conditions. They can't move on the networks, and that's what they want. they want to lock down now. And there's talk of keeping, and the NFL has always been very smart on keeping their partners in. So they want to keep the same people, Disney, Fox, CBS, Viacom, okay, NBC, keep them all in, and then sprinkle in some new players. Amazon again, but Amazon in a bigger way. There's a lot of talk about YouTube coming in. There's talk of ESPN Plus coming in and taking its own digital package. And you're talking about their plan, which the players have to realize this is there. Their plan is to take this from $7.5 million to $15 million in the next negotiation. Their TV rights. From $7.5 to $15 billion a year. So they're looking to jump it 100%. And they probably will. Because they have, the NFL is the single most important, in a world where content is king, it's the single most important content out there. The Olympics is too, but the Olympics doesn't happen very often. Where you have unscripted, live action. Real time, live, and unscripted. And that's what you get. And then you get it from all sports, but you get it from the NFL, which is king. And that's why the talk of, think about it. The NFL isn't worried about getting a bump. They're talking about doubling their revenues. But they can't do it without the players. And that's why if the players give in this time and don't make this negotiation outrageously hard for the owners, or at least don't get everything they want beforehand. And I'm talking about getting serious representation in the gambling revenue. I'm talking about getting at least 40% of that money. Talking about getting playoff money for the first time, serious playoff money. And then realizing how much, and getting the jobs up in all areas, getting more freedom in all the different areas of having freedom to come off the injured reserve list, adding practice players, adding the size of rosters, getting much better benefits in the medical, getting less years in the pension to hit the big money in the pension, all that stuff. Okay, and incredible life insurance stuff for families that players die young. All that should be there for a league that's revenues are going to grow so incredibly in terms of these TV stuff. Think about it. They can't wait to get this. They know they want to strike now because you know why? Because right now, as everybody gets into this new world of digital, with 5G coming and digital and streaming and everything, just like in the world of Hollywood, where if you can write a script right now, you can sell it. It's unbelievable. I know guys that work in the movie business. They've never been busy in their lives than they are right now because there is just a thirst. There is an incredible need for content in the movies and in all content. And the number one content that's king is the NFL. So they want to strike right now, but they can't strike without the players. And the players should realize they have them where they want them for the first time ever. Let's see if they're smart enough to bring it home. They've never been smart enough and tough enough and committed enough to get the deal they need. This is the first time. Let's see if they are. They've said the right things. Watt said the right thing, and I'm not the biggest Watt fan, but Watt was right on the money with what he said. The executive council of the players said the right thing. They should back it down and slow play this because the owners don't want to slow play it. They want to get to the negotiating table right now because the money is there. Amazon has it. Google has it. Apple has it. Disney has it. Comcast has it. Even CBS Viacom, which is hurting right now, has got it. NBC, of course, that's Comcast. They got it. They all have it. They're willing to pay for their packages, and they're willing to pay for the new packages, and you got new players ready to pay for the new packages. And you're talking about doubling their money, and you're talking about billions. You're talking about going from $7.5 to $15 billion in rights fees in 1 year on a deal? Doubling your money? Man, how unbelievable is that? That's why they can't wait to get to the table. And that's why they're trying to put this, if you notice, why are the owners moving so fast? They're moving so fast because that's sitting there. That pot of gold is sitting there, and they want it right now. So the players better realize it's sitting there. and realize the owners can't do it without them. So get theirs this time. Come away feeling like we pushed everything we could push, because you have gotten beat up at that table every single time. And then they laugh at you afterwards. Let's see what happens this time, because the negotiations never are fair. They always tilt enormously towards the NFL Management Council and the owners. Anthony Freehold, go ahead, Anthony. What's up?
Good. Listen to you every day.
What's happening, Anthony?
I agree with what you say, right? So I understand on the one side he's, the smartest guy in the world, but what choice do you really think he has? Of course he's lying, right? What's he going to do? Is he going to sell out his old teammates? How would that look? So what's your perspective around that?
My point is, he could say it went on. He could say, I'm a pitcher, I didn't hit. But to think that we're dumb enough that we don't think he saw what was going on, I think is a crazy answer. I really believe I believe that. I think you can say, hey, I was a pitcher. I didn't spend a whole lot of time around it. I know there was stuff going on. Okay, maybe I say what Verlander said. At least Verlander said I should have been more upfront about it. I should have paid more attention to it. I'm not a hitter, so I didn't pay that much attention. I knew it was going on. I should have said something. At least that's a more genuine answer. Then I'm the smartest guy I'm the smartest guy in the world. I don't miss anything. I'm the most prepared person in the world. I didn't see anything. So wait a second. How does it wash? How can you sell the guy that the guy's the smartest guy in the world, but he didn't see what was going on right in front of his nose? So I don't think you can have it both ways. That would be my point. I think your point's a fair one. I'm not asking him to tell us what happened and who did what. We're never going to hear the details. And I think some people want those details. I think they really do. I think they want to hear those details. Okay, plus baseball is complicit in this, because if they didn't put all this equipment out there and create this equipment in places where it shouldn't have been, this never would have happened. So baseball, basically, I agree exactly what Jeter said is what I've been saying for weeks. Players will take any advantage they can because their whole motivation is performance. You have to know that going in. They're trained to do that. They're pushed to do that. They're basically brought up to do that. And then you put cameras there that haven't been there before. They're going to fool around with them. That's all there is to it. So baseball is partially to blame for this, but they took it to a whole new level. Gary in Newark, what's up, Gary?
Hey, Mike, thanks for taking the call.
Yeah.
My question is this: is any player who is indignant about having been cheated, if they were on the Astros, would they have been big enough to say, "Hey, this is going on; it's got to stop," and blow the whistle? And if they weren't willing to do that, then they really can't complain if they were cheated.
Well, I don't. I mean, wait. Are you asking me if any of the opponents knew?
No, I'm saying that anybody who played on that team,
right? No one's going to blow. Listen, nobody's going to blow the whistle on their own team. That's not going to happen. Listen, these guys are conditioned to do anything they can to win the game. What people don't realize is people are comparing this, and I shouldn't do this at the end of the show because I don't have time to get through all of it. And thanks for the call. But the point is that people compare this to what goes on in youth sports and everything else. Remember, this is their livelihood. This is how they feed their families. This is their careers. Everything they do is based on them getting any edge they can. And any edge has always been okay, whatever they come up with. Because that's the idea, is to win. To win, that's the idea. Perform well and win. Is there a limit to it? Yes, this was institutional. That's why this was so bad, and that's why they needed cameras to be placed illegally. That's why it came down to a club's issue, and that's why management paid the price, because the players couldn't do that on their own. It could not be done without it being condoned by management. And management had to be part of it. Otherwise, it could not be put in place. That is why they are out of baseball. That's why the organization got hit, and that's why the players didn't, because the players didn't have the authority to do this on their own. The players will always take any edge they can get That's why management has always got to be there to make sure they don't take the wrong ones or do anything that is too outlandish. And this was a case of it being too outlandish and using technology illegally. And that's why the guys who were involved and who put this in place are out of baseball for that reason, because they went too far. Players couldn't have done that without management and without management agreeing to it. That's why those guys are out, and that's why the players didn't get hit, because of the fact that they are not in charge of those decisions. It could not have been done without it being condoned by the manager and the general manager. We will see you tomorrow as we get to 6:30. Casamigos Tequila, as always, brings you the program, brought to you by those who drink it. We will see you tomorrow.